Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 5 premiere orientation parts 1 and 2. So this was an absolutely insane season premiere. Pretty much everything was unexpected. As far as I'm concerned, I think everything they did for this, the new characters, nothing from them has been unexpected so far, but just the story itself is insane. Like, I don't know where they could possibly be going this season, but it's nuts. Like, they did a lot of crazy stuff in this episode. Most of all, they sent the characters into the future. So that's insane. And it should be very interesting to watch that play out because with them being sent into the future, with the Earth being pretty much destroyed, although they seem to reference the fact that they might actually go to what's left of the Earth in the next episode, which I would love to see them do that because there was still a decent chunk. I mean, it's the planet destroyed, but the core was still hot, which I don't, excuse me, I don't know if that actually makes a lot of sense. I mean, I know it's the Earth's core, but it's like the vacuum of space, so I don't know if that should really be glowing red or anything. But either way, there's still a big chunk of the planet that's left, or there's a chunk of the planet that's left that they could still go to, and I would love to see them do that. I think that would be really awesome to see what the world itself looks like after it's been destroyed. But the characters are in the future. Everyone's been sent to the future except for Fitz, although he has to have been sent somewhere, like not as far to the future as they were, but he has to have been sent to the future because the character Virgil, the note that he had was from Fitz, and it's possible that they could reference Fitz was like, he became this leader, so he had that passed down, but it also didn't make any sense because it seemed like it was something that was handed directly to Virgil, but it also seemed like it was super old, so it was probably something that was passed down where it's like, this is from Fitz who told the legends of these people that were eventually going to come save us. So it's definitely an interesting little moment. And of course, Fitz is saying that, like on the note, it was him saying, I'm working on it. So he knows that they've been sent to the future. So, I mean, unless he was able to really do that where he corralled a bunch of people to be like, make sure you pass this on for, they mentioned the ship itself was built 90 years in the past. So I would assume that they've been sent at least, I would say, 200 years into the future. If the ship itself was built 90 years in the past, who knows when the Earth was destroyed? And 90 years considering all the ages of the characters, it's not like if it really was Daisy that destroyed the planet, she didn't do it 90 years ago. Like, she would have been like 120 something years old or something, something crazy like that, 110 years old. So I doubt that was 90 years ago the Earth was destroyed. So I would say they had to have been sent like 200 years into the future. So that note being sent all the way through time is nuts. It's just being passed on from person to person so that it reached the team. But either way, it was just nuts. The team has been sent into the future. We got Coulson, Mac, Daisy, Yo-Yo, and unfortunately, Gemma gets sent into the future and torn away from Fitz again, and she also ends up being like weird mind controlled at the end. So just their love can just like it's always torn apart. They even referenced that in the first part. It was like, you guys are just always getting separated. And it's like, yeah, that's totally true. But the team gets sent into the future. Fitz, I assume, is who they reference where they talk about having people getting them from the diner, and they say they reference like someone's not on the list. I would have to assume that that was Fitz, and that's why he wasn't with the rest of them. But of course, the episode kicks off. We have what I assume was an alien. The way they did it, even though the skin came off, I was like, that could actually just be an inhuman considering it's the Marvel Universe. But he took the skin off. The way they did the silhouette made it seem like, alright, he's full on alien or something like that, but still could technically be inhuman. Um, I don't think Kree, because the way we saw the Kree in the actual second part, or both parts really, they looked fairly stocky and everything. So I don't think it was a Kree because it seemed like a really thin silhouette in the shower. But we start the episode off with this character who we don't see after like those first couple of minutes. Once they get the team, we never see that character again. So I assume that we're gonna be jumping backwards in time to see what Fitz is dealing with and him trying to figure out who kidnapped the rest of the team and why he was left behind. Because that's a huge mystery for me, at least. Is like, why wasn't Fitz taken? It's very interesting as to why he wasn't taken. And of course, the team gets captured. And it's like, all right, this could be some new secret organization that wants to get the team because the team gets stuff done. They unfreeze them, take them out of their little plastic bags. They're like living toys, where it's just like, all right, they're pristine and perfect mint condition. And then they all wake up and they look over and there's a white obelisk, and of course it melts and it grabs them. And I was like, well, that just changed like every perspective I had, because once that happens, we know that things are going to be different. And so, of course, it starts off with Coulson, and he gets to the ship. And I love the way they did it, too, where it starts off where he's thrown through time, but it's like frozen, and it's almost like catching up to him to be normal. And so he's walking around as this giant vacuum is sucking everything out of the room, and then he realizes things are starting to move. And he's like, "Oh crap!" And so of course he saves himself. That's where we end up meeting Virgil, who's like, "Oh, I know you, and you're Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D." And then Mac comes in and punches the crap out of him, knocks him down. Mac, excuse me, was hilarious in that first part. Like they gave him a million funny lines, like him punching the dude, him talking about them, splitting up in the horror movies, and it's like, him being the black guy. And then when Coulson asked, like, how hard did you hit him? He's like, what do you mean? Like, as hard as I possibly could have. Like, like he had some really funny lines in that first part. But eventually the team all gets together. And during that scene, or I guess the whole team outside of May, because she had like her own story really for the first part. But when the team got together and Virgil was talking to them and he like knew their full names and stuff, that's when I realized something was off. I was like, I don't think this is just them having been thrown into space, because at first, okay, so my first theory was actually that they were in a different dimension, because I was like, okay, if they're thrown through space, it would be different than, of course we've seen it before where they went to the other planet. I was like, all right, that's one thing. This is a different type of obelisk, so it makes sense that it would do something different. And the way that it was all said and done, I was like, I think they're in an alternate dimension. And that was my theory. I thought they were in an alternate dimension, but it was also the future, because it was like him saying like, oh, the legends and stuff like that. Like he knew them, so I knew it like had to be the future in some regard. I don't know why I assumed it was an alternate dimension as well, but in my head I didn't think it was just in the future. But I was like, okay, so he knows everyone's names, and I thought that was very interesting. I was like, okay, I don't think that they are just somewhere else. They're not just in space. He didn't learn over, like the course of the series, which has been, admittedly a couple of years. Even if they were famous, it's not like, oh, like they were legends or something like that. It didn't make sense how much he knew about them. So I was like, there's something else going on here. They aren't just in space. So I knew that from the beginning, but I thought for sure, my theory, I don't know why, but I instantly went alternate dimension instead of just being thrown into the future. I was like, oh, this alternate dimension or something crazy. But it goes through. Virgil, of course, is about to give us all the exposition we could want, and then he instantly gets killed off. So he dies, and then the team ends up running into the other characters. The guy that May ended up fighting. Unfortunately, I can't remember his name or his friend's name. Like the man and the woman that got introduced, I can't remember either of their names. But for some reason, I remember Virgil, who died like 5 minutes in. So there's that. But the team ends up, completely getting together once May joins them. And she had a cool scene too. Like her action sequence, I thought was pretty cool. And her fighting the guy, he has to, she's beating the crap out of him, even with the fact that her being teleported forward in time, she was sent into having like a pipe going through her leg, and she was beating the crap out of him, even with that messed up leg. And I was like, yeah, that's May. She's really awesome. So he had to take her down with like some future technology and like send her to the wall. But I love that, and the team ends up bonding together. They end up realizing like, oh crap, we're on this spaceship. It's the Kree, and they still think they've just kind of been like sent way out into space and stuff. So they're dealing with the Kree. Mac and Yo-Yo end up being captured. I was freaking out during that scene where they were like trying to freeze her hands. I thought it was going to be instantaneous, that her hands were just going to freeze and snap off, and I was like, this is going to be nuts. But of course, everything ends up working out fine, so that's all good. Daisy comes in earlier, even before that, take out one of the monsters, the roaches, as they call them. So, the team reunites, and it's like, all right, well, we don't know where we are. Let's try to figure all this crap out. And it just gets crazier and crazier as the episode goes on. Like, at first, they're just trying to survive because they're still dealing with the aliens, which I love the fact that them dealing with the monsters was in the first part, but in the second part, they were technically still in the same place. They were just on a different floor. And I was like, oh, I thought this was going to be like a big escape thing. And it was like, no, let's just take the elevator downstairs. Like, that's pretty much what they did, because they were still on like the same ship. They were in the same sort of station. It was just kind of like you have to avoid certain floors because you have these, they call them roaches, but obviously they're like insane alien creatures. So I thought that was just kind of funny. Like, that was admittedly like kind of the solution, was that they didn't really have to do much. But it was awesome, them revealing the fact that they were, sent into the future. And not only were they sent into the future, but the Earth is destroyed, or at least a big portion of it is completely destroyed. Like, you have like this chunk that's left, and the core is still hot, which ultimately doesn't make sense. I mean, I know it's the Earth's core and it's like hottest thing ever, but it's the vacuum of space. I would assume that the Earth has been that way for a very long time. Like, they mention, they give us like a bit of a timeline where they say that the ship was built about 90 years in the past when Coulson's talking to the guy. And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't make any sense because, of course, they're so far in the future. But in the second part where they talk about Daisy, if it was ever actually her to begin with, if she was the one that destroyed the planet, it wouldn't have been 90 years ago. It wouldn't have been when that ship was, at the same time that ship was being built, because she would have been like 100, almost 120 years old. So, it just wouldn't make any sense that it just happened. Like, the Earth would have been destroyed centuries ago. So my theory is that they've probably been sent at least 200 years in the future. I would assume it's more than that. But I thought it was weird, like, the Earth's core should not be heated. That's like a random nerd science thing I was thinking of. I was like, if the Earth's been destroyed, I would think the core would kind of be gone. It wouldn't be like glowing red anymore. It would be like, no, the Earth's core is done. It's exposed to the vacuum, the infinite vacuum of space. I don't think the Earth's core is going to be hot anymore or glowing like that. But it was like, whatever. It's a nerdy thing for me. But we see the Earth is pretty much destroyed, and that I would say was the crazy part. Like, them being sent into the future was like, okay, that's definitely a thing. I didn't think they would be near Earth. I just assumed they were sent way into the future. And it's like, okay, they're way in the future. They're on some random space station way, way out there. And then it's like, nope, you're kind of right there. You're right off of Earth. And it's right there. It's just destroyed, for the most part at least. So I'm looking forward to seeing them actually go to Earth, because they reference that in the promo that they might actually go to Earth. So I would love to see what it looks like, how it's destroyed, how it's different than what it was. If all humans are on this ship, which I assume they are, then who's on Earth? I would have to imagine it's the Kree, but you never really know. So I'm hoping that they actually do go to Earth in the next episode, but even if they don't, I feel like we're going to get there at some point. But yeah, things get real crazy at the end. It's like Earth is destroyed and they're thrown into the future. And then we go into part 2 where it's the team trying to figure out, like, what in the world do we do? How do we get back to our time zone, or to our time period, I should say. And it was pretty cool. Like, the second episode was them starting to, blend into all the madness that's happening with the Kree, and them controlling humans and having, like, the little metric things in their arms. And then we have Gemma save this dude, and she ends up being one of, like, the weird, I forgot, they have a name for him, but she ends up basically being, like, one of the human slaves for who I have to assume is going to be our main villain, Cassius. And I like him as a villain. He's that villain that's, like, calm and collected, but clearly he's weird. Because, like, the guy having the scar, he's like, it's going to be a scar, and I want my subjects to be perfect, to represent perfection. It's like, but, if he wears the tunic, maybe no one will notice. And it's like, but this, however, like, the scar on the guy's head, it's like, that's just bad, it can't be. And Jim was like, what's wrong with you? And she's trying to not have this guy get killed. And then his subordinate, who with, like, the crazy little metal death balls, she just sends him right into his chest. She doesn't even make it quick, really. Like, he suffered from that. But, he has him killed. And it was just like, alright, it was just from a scar. But then, of course, he takes this weird thing out of his ear. And I was like, oh, okay, that was weird. I thought legitimately it was like an earbud. That's what I thought at first. I didn't realize it was like this crazy, it was like a mini Terminator. It was like liquid metal. And then, he puts it up to Gemma's ear, and it goes into her brain. And then she can't hear anything unless he talks to her. So she can't hear anything she's not supposed to hear. But she's a genius. I don't know if they'll do this, but it would be really cool if she just learned to read lips. I think that would actually be really awesome to, like, learn some random secrets. But that was pretty nuts. Like, he puts this thing in her ear, and then she's, like, deaf, but she can only hear him talking to her. And I was like, alright, that's insane. And I don't know if this thing implants something into her brain to try to actually control her, to make her more subservient to him, but it's also Gemma, so she's going to be fighting that if that is the case. She's going to have that brain capacity to fight that, but I'm sure that will make her suffer if she continues to fight against it. So I'm really looking forward to her storyline, although it's super depressing. Like, not only does she get split up again from Fitz, like, that's like their storyline, which they even reference in the first part, is like, you guys are just always split up. But now she's being like, mind controlled by the main villain. And it's just like, man, her dealing with these obelisks leads to, like, the worst stuff for her. It's insane. So I don't know where that storyline is headed, but I do like our new main villain, and so far we have, like, no real anything from him. He's just, like, the leader, and that's pretty much it, and he's kind of weird and eccentric. But other than that, we don't know much about him. I mean, all the Kree are bad. At this point, we'll probably get some, like, Kree that want to help out the humans, but I kind of doubt it, considering the way they've kind of done the story. Maybe some new Kree will come in, and we'll see that. But for now, the team is kind of on their own, and they have to figure out, how do we get back to how do we find a way to go backwards in time? So this would be a pretty nuts season. I love the way this entire premiere played out. It was not at all what I was expecting. I thought, oh, they went to space and that was it. And I was thinking of the scene from the last season where Coulson wakes up and he's like, well, guess it's time to go to work. I just assumed they jumped forward in time. Like, I didn't think the team was thrown forward in time. I thought they were kidnapped. Secret organization, they're put on a spaceship, and then it's like, all right, after a little while, it was like, all right, no big deal, time to go to work. This is very different than that sequence. So even that scene has to have been months in the future. Like, I doubt that this is going to be solved really fast. So it's just crazy. And then, of course, Daisy is probably the one that blew up the planet, which is nuts. And it's like, how is that the case? Time travel as well, because of course she hasn't done anything yet. So does that mean they're guaranteed to go back in time? Weird stuff. But I can't wait to see the rest of this season. I want to know what in the world is going on with Fitz and where he is in time. If he's in modern day, if he was thrown a little bit further in time, but not as far as they were because of the letter, unless that was, sent from person to person over the course of centuries to make sure it got to the team. That would have to have been a bit more recent. So I don't know, it's hard to say. Maybe he lived longer than he should have. Some weird science stuff happened, or magic stuff, or anything could have happened. So it's pretty nuts at this point. It's just like, I don't know what in the world to expect from this storyline, but most of the team is trapped in the future. Fitz is stuck in modern times, possibly, and if he is stuck on his own, who does he go to? So we might get some more characters during the present day storylines. So there's just a lot of stuff where it's like, man, I don't know what to really expect from this, but I'm definitely looking forward to this season. But of course, I definitely want to know what you guys thought about this premiere, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it, and I would love to know your theories on what we could possibly be getting for this season. I mean, things changed so drastically once it was revealed that they were actually in the future and the Earth was destroyed, and then Daisy possibly did it. Also, the framework is technically being used as like a little money-making system, which I thought was just an interesting little thing. Is like, oh, the framework is still alive and well, at least a little bit in the future. But there's just so much madness going on in these first two episodes. So we'd love to know your theories on where we're headed this season. What do you want to see? I mean, they're in the future, so I can't really say like I want this character to show up or that character. The only ones I can think of would be like world destroying characters. Like Galactus would probably still be alive, and that's about all I can think of. Galactus and Thanos and like other giant enemies that will certainly never be there. But as far as everybody else, they're dead, which is insane. But I just want to know what you guys want to see and what you guys expect to see from this season. And of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this premiere in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.